Hello everybody, Jordan Nelson here. Today we're going to talk about which 5 camera settings I have to adjust throughout the course of a wedding day. But first, let's cue that brand new intro. Alright, so camera settings can be pretty overwhelming for people who are just starting out. They go into a wedding thinking that they're going to have to adjust all kinds of stuff on the fly and just be really quick with everything that has to do with their camera. But really, if you have things set up right on the front end, you're really only going to have to touch a few buttons and adjust a few things throughout the course of a day. At least I do. I try to keep it as simple as I can. Alright, so that first camera setting that I make sure that I have set up right away during the wedding is the frame rate. So for most of the wedding, I have 120 frames per second as my frame rate. But for the ceremony, I have 60, and for the reception, I have 24. So I had that set up right away. That's done. I just have to change it during those sectioned out blocks during the wedding. Now what goes right along with that is the shutter speed. The shutter speed is just 2 times the amount of the frame rate. Frame rate is 120. I'm going to do a 250 shutter speed. So it's 1/250th of a second, but on your camera, it'll just show as 250. For the ceremony portion, if I have a 60 frames per second, I'm going to do a 125 shutter speed. And for the 24 frames per second during the reception, I'm going to do a 50 shutter speed. That's all I have to do to change that. I don't ever change that otherwise. Third point, the aperture. So I want to usually shoot that as wide open as I can all the time. That's my style. I like to go down to 2.0 and try to keep it there as much as I can. That gives you really shallow depth of field, which means less is in focus and more is out of focus. So I try to shoot as wide open as I can throughout most of the day. But if it's really bright outside and I don't want to put on an ND filter, I think the one I have isn't that good. I'm looking to get another one, but I will then increase that aperture to a higher number, which means I'll have more in focus, but it won't kind of give that shallow depth of field that I like. But at least the exposure will be right, so I'm not really bright out in the sun or something like that. Or in a reception, if I want to get the whole room, like a lot of it in focus, then I'll increase that number as well so that I can get more in focus and not just that shallow depth of field that a 2.0 aperture would give me. So that would be the third thing that I'm changing. So the first 3 things I want to keep as consistent as possible. Now this fourth thing is the ISO. This is the thing that I'm going to be adjusting quite a bit depending if I'm in a dark room, I'm going to need to bump up the ISO, or if it's bright outside, I want to get it all the way down as low as I can. And then sometimes I might need to adjust the aperture in order to get it low enough. But that one's going to be going up and down all day long depending on how bright or dark my environment is. But in those scenarios, I want to make sure that I have the rest of it consistent. So if I'm shooting at 120 frames per second with my 250 shutter speed, that's always going to be linked together. Let's say I'm doing some getting ready shots. That's what I'm going to have. And then hopefully I can have my 2.0 aperture and whatever ISO I need to have. If it's a dark room, I'll probably need to be up towards, 800 or 1200 or something like that. And if it's really bright, I'll probably be bringing it down to 100 or something like that. So that's what I'll adjust. And then last but not least, for my camera, it's a full frame, so I'm always adjusting the APS-C crop mode. So I'm going wide, or I'm pressing that button to kind of zoom in a little bit more to crop the image so it really looks like I have more focal length on my camera. So because I just have a prime lens, it's really helpful to have those different focal lengths that I can use. Now other than that, on my camera, I don't really touch much. So if you're just starting out, you don't need to know all kinds of different in-depth things to be able to adjust quickly throughout the day. Make sure you learn how to set up your camera on the front end so that during the day you only have to focus on a couple things. Just your frame rate, which you should just know what that's going to be during large chunks of the day. You're not going to be changing that quickly. Your shutter speed is always going to depend on that frame rate. Your aperture is really just a creative decision, so if you want to keep it wide open, then you just keep it wide open the whole day. And then the ISO is the thing that you're going to be adjusting most of the time. That's the most you're really going to be touching your camera. So that's it for me. Hopefully this was helpful. It just gives you maybe more peace of mind that you don't need to know everything during the wedding day about your camera. But you want that base knowledge at the beginning to have your camera set up. There are plenty of YouTube videos for that. But as far as the variable things that you're going to be changing throughout the day, that's pretty much it. Learn it, know it, be able to be fast with it, practice with it. So thank you so much for watching, everybody, and we'll see you in the next video.